Okay guys, let's go ahead and start this tutorial. You're going to need some fabric, whatever fabric is laying around the house, needles, actually, maybe a needle, pin cushion to put your needle in. When you're done, some scissors or a thread cutter and thread. And I have an assortment of needles here, but I'm going to use this one, these long ones. You want like the sewing needle, like sharp sewing needle. I think they're called sharps. Okay. This ones have a little bit of a bigger eye, will make it easy to thread the needle. But if you have a small eye needle, you could always use a needle threader. So I'm going to do a video first on how to thread your needle and how to tie a knot, and then we will continue with different hand sewing stitches. Okay, now on to stitching. The first stitch we're going to do is a running stitch, and what I want you to do, and you don't necessarily have to do that, is make lines on your fabric like so. I did this to just make it easy. And then, you know, I'm going to start from right to left because I'm right-handed. I'm going to insert from the back because I have a knot and I like for my knot to be in the back. Some people do start from the front. I do it this way. So I'm going to insert from the back like so. And then I'm going to take a stitch. Now this is an even running stitch, okay? And what you want to do is do 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch, whatever you decide to do, 1 inch, ½ inch, but you want to make sure that you keep it even. So inserting and taking a stitch forward, this looks more like a 1/4 inch, and then you pull, okay? And then you pull, and then you come from the back 1/4 inch away from your last insertion. Is that even a word? 1/4 inch away from your last stitch is what I should say. And then you take another 1/4 inch. So the spacing and the stitch is 1/4 inch in length, okay? So let's do that again. You come in from the back 1/4 inch away from your last stitch, you know, like so. And then I don't know where all this extra thread is coming from. Y'all need to behave yourself. Like my fabric is acting out as usual. And then you do it again. You take a 1/4 inch, but okay. You take in a 1/4 inch stitch to the back, okay, like so. Okay, so that's an even running stitch. Now let's do an uneven running stitch. You insert from the back, and instead of doing a 1/4 inch spacing, or instead of doing a 1/4 inch spacing, you're going to maybe 1/8 or however long you want it. Okay, so I'm going to do a 1/4 inch stitch, and I'm going to insert from the back 1/8. So the spacing between this stitch and your next stitch is 1/8 instead of a 1/4. So that makes it uneven. And then you take a stitch 1/4, and then you insert from the back 1/8. So this is what the spacing looks like. It's much smaller than this one. The spacing between these two stitches is much smaller than this one's. That's what makes it uneven. So that's at a 1/4 inch, and then 1/8 inch. And there you have it. Let's just smooth it out by thread to make it So there you have it. This is what it looks like. I don't know if this is clear enough. Let's do it that way. See? The spacing is different. Okay? And to end your stitching, you want to take a back stitch, which is what I'm going to show you next. And you can use a running stitch to just hold two pieces of fabric together. You could use it as a basting stitch. Or you could use it to create gathers. Okay? And you just make 2 stitches there on the spot. My thread is giving me grief here. And you just do a back stitch and you complete your stitch. So now let's do a back stitch actually. And cut that off. Now onto a back stitch. A back stitch, I'm going to insert from the back. Now I'm going to take a stitch. I'm going to take a stitch. Now, instead of, stitching forward like you would a running stitch, you go backwards. So hence the name. You take a stitch from the back. Hence the name, a back stitch, So like so. And we're going to look at what both stitches look like in the back. So instead of, taking a stitch forward, like you would do a running stitch, you go backwards instead. Instead of creating that spacing that you see there in a running stitch, you're kind of almost sewing really close, like so. This is what it looks like, really close. So you come back and you can make this, decide on how far back you want to go. Like so. See that? So that's a back stitch. You keep going. And to complete your stitch, you do a back stitch. Like by really just tacking in the same place twice. Like so. Like we did with the running stitch. Like so. I don't know if you can see that. I think I was doing that off camera. Like so. Just tacking in the same place twice or 3 times or as many times as you want. Now I just wish my thread would cooperate with me today. Okay, there you go. So this is what, just tack it here. This is 2 times. You can do it 3, as many times as you want. So this is the back of it. Of course, this is not perfect, but you get the idea. This is what a running stitch looks like. Just about the same as the front. Okay, only you're seeing the knot that you started with. Now a back stitch looks like so. Almost like a continuous stitch. Like there's no spacing. But the front looks like so. A bit of a spacing between them. Okay? Now we're going to do a prick stitch. It's like a back stitch, only we're going backwards 2 to 3 threads. And some people say 1 to 2, but 2 to 3 is fine. Okay, so for a prick stitch, I'm already starting, I like to thread from the back so I don't see my knot. And take a stitch forward, however long you want it. But usually for a prick stitch, you want to make it small as well. You don't want to make it too big. Like so. Okay? And then you come forward again. Or however, you decide on the spacing. And then what you do is, instead of going all the way to the back here, really close to the other stitch, you go 2 to 3 threads, or 1 to 2 if you decide, and you take a stitch. I'm doing this with a purple thread so you can see it better. I hope you can see that better. I hope you can see it better. Okay, so instead of going all the way back, you go 1 to 2 threads or 2 to 3 threads, backwards and you take a stitch. So instead of going all the way back, 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 threads, and you take a stitch. And you keep doing that until the end of your stitching or whatever it is that you're doing or whatever project. So this is what it looks like. They're really tiny stitches, like so. Really tiny. And it looks pretty neat, you know? Like so. And you can use a prick stitch as a decorative stitch, or you can use it to like do a zipper, you know, or you can use it to, I mean, you really can use it for whatever you decide to use it for. A back stitch, you can use it for like holding interfacing together with the fabric, and I think you can use a running stitch for that as well. And so this is what the prick stitch looks like. Now that we've made a lot of it, we've done a lot of stitches. I mean, it's not perfect, but you get the idea. You could see this, okay? Just really tiny. Now, another thing I forgot to tell you is when you do end your stitching and take maybe 2 or 3 stitches or 2 or 3 back stitches in one spot, you don't want to stop your stitching right in the front of your fabric. Like, you don't want to stop your stitching right there and cut like I did for the back stitch right here. You have this little piece hanging, you know, like I was saying, when you've done your stitches and you're trying to finish it off, what you want to do is you stitch back stitch, you know, 2 or 3 times, like so. Take another stitch again, and I'm only going to do it 3 times. I'm going to stitch in place 3 times here, but you really can do it as many times as you want. Okay, and then for my 3rd stitch, instead of coming out in the front, I'm going to just send the needle to the back like so and pull it out in the back. And you can either go ahead and cut your thread now, or sometimes what I do is I kind of loop it around, you know, just to secure it more. Some stitch in the back, I'll just loop it around like that, like so. Just loop it around like so. You know, and then I cut it like so. And you want to cut it as much as you can. This is what the back stitch looks like. It's almost like, I mean, a prick stitch looks like. It's almost like, you know, a back stitch in the back. This is what it looks like. They're so tiny, like that.